Heart of the Wolf, a paranormal romance novel by author A. Mariposa. Chapter 17. Gareth didn't exactly love running a car shop. He liked working on cars and fixing things, sure. But running a business? He didn't really have the head for it. He wasn't into sales. He didn't network or try to sling his services at everyone he met. He still had the stack of business cards he ordered 4 years ago in his desk drawer. His primary means of getting business was the highway right outside the door. You never knew what kind of people were going to blow in day by day. Some neighbors had accounts from way back before he owned Jack's auto repair. They even remembered Jack, who ran the place some 10-odd years ago. Gareth didn't know the guy. Jack had sold the place to Stuart Markham, who couldn't turn a profit or fix a car. Then Stuart sold the place to Gareth in a desperate bid to get out of debt and out of town. Gareth thought he had turned the place around in the 4 years or so that he had owned it. When he first decided to stay in Black River, he got a job as a maintenance tech for an HVAC company. He worked that gig until he earned enough to buy a car. Then he got the VA loan for the business and bought the garage. His mom fronted the money for the down payment on the house. He kept promising to fly her out to visit, but he hadn't shared his new address yet with anyone in his family. He liked to keep his life separate, mainly because wolves were territorial, and once he opened that floodgate, his brothers would come to Black River and probably try to stake a claim. They wouldn't like seeing him with something nice they couldn't share. It was Wednesday morning, about 7 a.m. The shop didn't open until 9 a.m., but he was sitting in his cramped office trying to get his accounts all sorted in QuickBooks. He was a few weeks behind tallying up expenses and charges and invoices and billing. Fuck. He needed an accountant, but he didn't want to hire anyone. Somewhere out on the garage floor, he heard Vin blasting away some souped-up EDM music while he finished the last few vehicles. The kid came in early. He'd been working since 5 a.m., or at least, that was the punch-in on his time card. Gareth sat back from the computer with a sigh. He took a moment to sip his coffee and run a hand over his tired eyes. Then he stared at the edge of his desk, where just 2 days ago, he had wrapped Maddy up in his arms and kissed her senseless. Fuck. She wanted to go slow. How was he supposed to do that when every muscle in his body wanted to pounce? It took all of his self-control to hold back. He wanted her badly. She was his life mate. Her scent called to him. She lit a fire in his blood. His wild nature yearned to claim her. Honestly, fucking her senseless would solve a lot of problems. First, she'd get attached. She might be scared of it, but he liked the thought of her being all clingy and needy with him. He wanted that. Then she'd think twice before pulling that friend's crap again. Second, it meant he could fuck her twice, and he would. Immediately after he spilled into her the first time, he would make love to her again and again. He could feel his shaft swelling at the thought of it. He couldn't wait to hear her little noises as he emptied into her sweet womb. And he had a feeling she would enjoy it very much. She wanted him too. He knew that with certainty. She was just scared of getting close. Third, he would finally make her submit, show her the alpha wolf. That urge was overpowering, especially after their little fight. He wanted to bend her over his desk and thrust into her from behind, doggy style, ride her until her mind broke, until she forgot her own name, until she was sloppy and incoherent. Then, she would know where she belonged, beneath him. If he had to drag her out of that mobile home by the nape of her neck, he would. He wasn't going to let Dean lay another hand on her. The friends thing was total bull. He stretched out his back in his office chair. He put his arms behind his head, undid his ponytail, shook out his hair, then wrapped it up again in a messy bun at the base of his neck. He glanced at the cell phone on his desk. He would check in with her again in a few hours, make sure she got to school okay. Any other girl, he wouldn't be concerned. But Maddy was a special case. She needed the extra. Gareth turned off his computer. He cracked his neck and stood up. He hated staring at monitors. "Vin!" he yelled as he came out of his office. He looked around the garage. "Vin, turn that shit down." The pounding EDM music suddenly stopped.
What's up, boss?
You done with the Ford? It's getting picked up at noon.
Yeah, it's ready.
I'll move it to the back lot. Gareth picked up a few empty oil cans on his way out and tossed them in the big trash barrel in front of the garage. The truck Vin finished earlier was temporarily parked in the driveway. Gareth grabbed the keys to move the truck to the locked car lot behind the shop. He needed to get better security. He had 2 security cameras on the lot and a floodlight, but anyone could climb over the fence. He was holding off hiring a security guard, but if business picked up again next year, he might have one just for the summer. He wondered how much that would cost in wages. It all made his head hurt. He climbed out of the old Ford and locked the door. Then the wind shifted and he smelled something strange and unfamiliar coming from the forest. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled. He frowned, sniffing again, wondering if he was imagining it. Then he heard the crunch of boots running across the dirty, pebbly asphalt. He started to turn when something hit him from behind. With a grunt, Gareth was dealt a stinging blow to his back, right between the shoulder blades. He fell forward onto the truck and caught himself against the door. He saw the reflection of his attacker behind him in the truck window. He ducked as a metal pipe came swinging at his head. The window shattered. Shards of glass went flying. Gareth threw up his arm and spun away, trying to get some space between him and the crazy motherfucker with the pipe. "What the fuck?" Gareth roared. He turned to face his attackers. 2 men were on him at the same time. A few others hung back in a loose circle in the car lot. The first thug with the metal pipe was tall and skinny. The bigger, burlier one had a knife. He saw the man's sharp, jagged blade glint in the floodlight from the back of the building. Shit, it wasn't just a box cutter or a pocket knife. It was a hefty Rambo-looking hunting knife with serrated edges. The gang of thugs had women's pantyhose covering their faces to hide their identities. They looked like bank robbers. He thought for a moment that they were thieves trying to steal a car from the back lot, but that didn't make sense. Why show up in the morning when the shop was just opening? That and their scent was unmistakable. They were wolves. Gareth called at them. "Really? You gonna wear women's underwear to come at me? The fuck? Take that shit off." "Who are you?"
"You fucked up. Messed with the wrong pack,"
the biggest one said with the Rambo knife. The guy was built like a big rig truck with a voice that smoked a pack a day. He must be 6.5 feet tall. Every visible inch of skin was covered in tattoos. He looked straight out of prison, if Gareth had to guess. He sniffed the air, catching a whiff of the man's strong wolf stench. Not an alpha, so he must be their beta, a second in command. Gareth's eyes narrowed. So what? This an execution? The big one pointed the jagged Rambo knife at him threateningly.
"You killed my brother. So yeah, that's exactly what this is."
Well, shit. These goons were from the same pack that had attacked Maddy's trailer, the same pack that came after Dean. He had killed 2 of their pack already on the night they tried to rape Maddy. It was only a matter of time before they came after him. Gareth reached into his back pocket where he carried a pair of brass knuckles. He slipped them onto his fist. No time like go time, he thought. Then, with a deep growl, he rushed the smaller guy with the pipe. He blocked a swing aimed for his head and struck the little asshole across the face. Something cracked. A spray of blood misted the air. The skinny man fell to the ground with a high-pitched scream. The group of wolves started to move. Another man rushed at him from across the lot with a wild howl. He was swinging a big rusty hammer. Gareth kicked the hammer out of his hand and caught the man in the throat with another punch. His opponent stumbled back with a choking sound, clutching his throat, his eyes bulging. He collapsed next to his friend, wheezing and grappling at his neck. "Who else wants a taste?" Gareth said angrily. He turned to face the mob, kicking the pipe away under the truck as he did so. The big one, Rambo, stood at the fore of the group. The lesser wolves hung back, waiting for a signal from their beta. They looked less certain now. Probably weren't expecting someone who could kick ass.
"Who are you?"
"Wouldn't you like to know?" Gareth growled. He hoped none of them had brought a gun. He didn't think so. They would have used it by now. Guns were easy to trace, and a bullet raised more questions than a guy getting beat to death in a car lot. "Took y'all long enough to find me," he said when no one moved. "Where y'all been? That trailer's only 2 miles from here. Your alpha must be pretty dumb."
"Big words for a lone wolf. We've been watching you all week. Marquise owns this area. You're out of your league."
"Who the fuck is Marquise?" Gareth called. Another wolf piped up from the party in the back.
Alpha of the Grey Ridge Pack. We own every county between here and Canada, and we're gonna take this one too.
Shut the fuck up, Steve.
Rambo growled. The smaller wolf who'd been talking went quiet.
Doesn't matter who Marquise is. You're a dead man.
With a nod of his head, they all rushed him at once. The first one to reach him, Gareth clocked in the jaw with an uppercut that sent blood spattering across the side of the Ford truck. The thug went down like a pile of bricks. Then a second goon jumped on his back. Gareth twisted, using his Krav Maga training from the army. He was a little rusty. His muscles bulged in his arms and chest as he grabbed the man in a headlock and threw him over his shoulder, body slamming him against the hood of the truck. The man's head cracked back on the metal hood and he went limp. Fuck. Gareth hoped he wasn't dead. Murder was illegal, but these wolves were trying to kill him. Gareth turned fast. Rambo was on him like an avalanche. The knife whizzed past his torso, barely missing him by an inch, to scrape across the hood of the car. Sparks flew. Paint scratched. Shit, that would be expensive to fix. Gareth grabbed Rambo by the wrist, engaging him head-on. He shoved the giant wolf backward against the truck, keeping the knife far away from his face. He delivered 2 quick punches to the man's gut, driving the brass knuckles deep into his abdomen. Rambo didn't seem fazed. He shoved Gareth back and then fell on top of him, trying to stab the knife into his stomach. Gareth crashed to the ground, dragging the big guy with him. He twisted around, trying to grab his giant opponent in a headlock. Rambo put up a good fight. The big bastard was prison strong. If this was some skirmish in the prison yard, he might have had more luck. But Gareth was not just a regular wolf. He was Arizona royalty, alpha blood, and he was his father's son. That made him stronger, crazier, and meaner than any fucktard with a knife. With a roar of adrenaline, Gareth pried the man off him, flipped him, and hooked his arm around Rambo's corded neck. He locked him in a stranglehold, squeezing the air out of him. Rambo dropped the knife and started clawing at Gareth's arms. His nails turned into claws that dug deep and tore up Gareth's skin, ripping into his flesh. Gareth felt blood trickling down his forearms to his wrists, but he did not let go. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the 2 remaining wolves circling around. One reclaimed a metal pipe from under the truck. They prowled forward, waiting for their chance to bash in his head. It didn't look good. Damn. Maybe he'd have to kill these fuckers after all. Then, with a sudden and unexpected roar, Vin flew onto the scene swinging a crowbar. He came out of nowhere, dropping from the sky like a bat out of hell. He came up behind the 2 remaining goons, swinging the iron bar with 2 fists. He hit one of the thugs in the back of the head and caught the other one across the knees. They both fell down, howling and moaning. Then Vin turned to Gareth, the crowbar held high. His face was flushed and his eyes were wild. He looked a little crazy. He started wailing on the guy locked in Gareth's grip. He struck him in the gut, then the balls, then the knees. Gareth jumped up before Vin hit him too. He shoved the big bastard away and stood up, backing off from Vin's swinging crowbar. "Vin, ease up!" He grabbed Vin's arm before he went too far. He applied pressure to a point on his forearm that forced him to drop the iron bar.
Ow, fuck, why'd you do that?
"To stop you from committing a goddamn felony." As they yelled at each other, the pack of wolves scrambled to their feet and ran off. The big one was limping and clutching his nutsack. The smaller ones chased after him, leaving a trail of blood behind. Gareth watched them go. They sprinted across the parking lot, setting off motion detector lights as they went.
You better get the fuck out of here.
Vin yelled after them. He danced on his feet, looking ready for a fight, but also cagey as hell.
Now what? We can't just let them get away.
Gareth watched the men climb the chain-link fence and disappear over the other side, vanishing into the woods. He didn't think they would come back anytime soon. The scent of wolves grew momentarily stronger as a gust of wind soared past him. Then the wind quieted again, and the Grey Ridge pack was gone. A ray of sun broke through the heavy, overcast sky as though reminding him of the day ahead. They still had to open the shop. Gareth released a slow breath of air. If he was back home, with his brothers at his back, he would have finished these fuckers off in the woods. But he and Vin weren't an army. The wolves would likely change into their beast forms and run back to their alpha, Marquis, and tell him what happened. It wasn't ideal. But Gareth wasn't going to run after them. Killing more wolves at this point would only bring the whole pack down on his head. When he killed before outside of Maddy's trailer, it's because they had tried to rape her. That was a special occasion. He wasn't a bloodthirsty psychopath like his father.
Fuck, boss. You got tore up good.
Gareth glanced down at his bloody forearms. Cuts and gashes left by the beta's claws ran from his elbows to his wrists. He sighed. More cuts to cover the tattoos that covered his scars.
Well, what should we do?
Forget 'em. Unlock the doors. We're open for business, Vin.
For real?
Yup, for real. Then he winced. He rolled his shoulders experimentally. His back was sore between his shoulder blades where the metal pipe had hit him.
You okay, boss?
Just that fucking metal pipe. Damn. Gareth half grimaced, half bared his teeth. Now that his adrenaline was wearing off, he was beginning to feel every bump and bruise where those assholes landed a blow. It was not pleasant. He took a moment to breathe and clear his head. Adrenaline coursed through him, making him wild and angry. He could see his breath rising in little clouds of vapor. Let's start the day, Vin. We got customers coming to pick up cars at 9 a.m.
All right, boss.
Together, they started walking back to the shop. Vin picked up the crowbar and walked next to Gareth closely, his head turning this way and that. He looked jumpy and excited.
We really showed them, huh? That was crazy. With a crowbar? Like I saved your life. Fuck, I want a raise.
You're really going to ask me for a raise now?
Well, I mean, if not, it's cool, I'm just saying.
I'll think about it, Gareth grunted.
We need, like, better security or something. Like an alarm system. They broke the window on the Ford. What are we gonna do about that?
We're gonna wash that fucking blood off the truck before anyone sees it. Then you're gonna make a very nice phone call to the owner to explain what happened. Vandalism. Probably a bunch of meth heads looking for parts to sell. Then we're gonna replace the window for free.
What? Me? Why do I have to make the call?
I thought you wanted a raise.
Man.
Vin whined the rest of the way through the parking lot. At the entrance, Gareth stopped for a moment to close up the gate. He wrapped the heavy chain around the bars and closed the padlock. Shit. His arms were throbbing. He was ready to go home, but the shit thing about owning a business, he had to be the boss. He headed to the unisex bathroom next to his office. It was a surprisingly large restroom for the size of the shop. It even had a shower stall and an eye wash station. He kept a hefty first aid kit in one of the metal storage cabinets, thanks to all the nicks and cuts they got on the job. Time to clean up these gashes before they got infected. Human nails and wolf claws were fucking disgusting. Luckily, the cuts were shallow. As he walked through the shop and got the first aid kit out in the bathroom, he thought about the brief skirmish. Attempted execution, rather. It pissed him off. So the Grey Ridge pack had finally found him. At least he had a name now for the pack and their alpha. He wanted to know their numbers. They might have a broad territory, but most of the counties between Black River and Canada were farmland or forest. They might be backwater strong, but that didn't mean they were a match for the Phoenix pack. These goons obviously didn't know who Gareth was. If they did, they probably wouldn't have swung a metal pipe at his head. Or who knows, maybe they wanted a war. He didn't know how much sway his father's name held this far from Arizona. Phoenix was a harsh place, and the Phoenix pack was the largest in the Southwest since the Los Angeles Empire fractured and broke apart. His family controlled one of the 5 largest wolf kingdoms in the U.S. Or at least they did last he checked the Reddit boards. He didn't know where they stood now. It had been a few years, but he doubted a lot had changed. These fuckers wanted to kill him. That put him in a shit mood. He liked his life in Black River, and he didn't want to leave. That meant he needed to become such a pain in the ass, they left him alone. Did he tell his family about this? Did he involve them in this conflict? It meant opening a whole new can of worms. What about Maddy? Did the Grey Ridge pack know about her yet? They hadn't mentioned her, so maybe they didn't realize she was a female wolf. If they did, they would snap her up in a heartbeat and use her as mating stock. It was the sad condition of their kind. He needed to protect her. He needed to make sure she was okay. He needed to check on her. Gareth left the sink in the break room and walked into his office, where his phone was sitting on the desk. He unlocked the screen, ignoring the bit of blood still leaking down his arm from the cuts. He reasoned she was all right, but he had to be sure. It was after 8 a.m. He selected her name from his texting contacts, Mads. Then he typed out his message and hit send. "You in class?" He waited for her to respond. It was agonizing.
Yes, Dad.
He grinned, or bared his teeth, something like that. Then he texted her back. "Don't be a brat. See you after school." With sudden inspiration, he opened up her contact info and changed her name from Mads to Brat. Fuck. Making him feel old. Someday he was going to spank that ass. He shut off his phone's screen and slipped it in his pocket. If the Grey Ridge Pack ever came after Maddy, heads were gonna roll.
Hey, what's up? It's Vin. Thanks for hanging out with us losers. Don't forget, you can also grab a copy of the print or ebook on Amazon. Okay, well, this is awkward, so here's the next chapter.
Chapter 18. That morning, Gareth texted her just after 8 a.m. while she was sitting in homeroom trying to wake up.
"You in class?"
Yes, Dad. She answered him sarcastically, and he texted back.
"Don't be a brat. See you after school."
Maddy paused, reading his text, then she sighed. She was nervous about the driving lesson, and even more nervous about seeing him again. But she felt a lot better after sorting out the whole Roxy thing over the phone last night. And his allusion to their past history stayed on her mind. He still hadn't told her why he started helping her on the mountain. She had asked back at his place, the same night she had showed him her scars. He had made up some story about being a wolf without a pack, Lobo Loco. It wasn't really an answer. But the fact remained, this thing between them had been building for fucking ever. She remembered the first time she caught a clear view of his face, when she had first noticed how handsome he was. It was maybe 2 months after their first meeting on the mountainside. It was a hot, humid summer night. Crickets chirped under the back porch. Owls hooted in the trees. The forest was full of noise. She wore cotton shorts and a thin, loose nightshirt. She was walking along her favorite trail through the woods. Dean had taken a swipe at her. He was a lot more violent back then, and she was a lot more vulnerable. She flew out the back door before he could catch her and leave a bruise. In bare feet, she ran down the side of the mountain, skidding through soft dirt and mossy grass. Eventually, she found a familiar trail that ran along the side of a stream, through a thicket of paperbark birch trees. It was a clear, warm night. The moon was full. She followed the trail to where it ended at the banks of the Black River. She remembered standing next to a dead fir tree, staring at the moon's reflection in the dark, swirling water. For a moment, she considered throwing herself into the river. The current was fast and deadly. She wondered how long it would take for her body to sink to the bottom. Becoming nothing at all seemed better than living through this pain. Every day was agony. She just wanted the pain to stop. She remembered climbing on top of a big rock next to the river, where she gauged the water's black depths, wondering if she had the balls to do it. It took her a moment to realize she wasn't alone. Something moved out of the corner of her eye, and she glanced up. She saw him standing across the river from her, watching her silently. She was scared at first, but then she recognized him. She wiped the tears from her cheeks. She was too scared to talk to him. He seemed to notice her distress and forded the stream, walking along the big fallen fir tree like a bridge. He approached the rock where she was standing.
"Are you lost?"
Even now, she remembered the gruff baritone of his voice. She shrugged. Sorta? A beat of silence passed. She gazed up at him curiously, squinting through the moonlight. She remembered the angular shape of his face. When she first met him, he looked like a homeless hitchhiker, but now he was clean-shaven. He wore fresh clothes and his face looked younger than she expected. She noted his gaunt cheeks and strong jawline, the cleft in his chin, his straight nose and arched black eyebrows. He was handsome. Then he folded his arms and leaned on one hip.
So what are you doing out here so late? You gonna jump in the river?
It was like he could read her mind. No. No, that's dumb.
You're right. It's pretty dumb.
His eyes wandered over her face down to her bare feet, taking in her loose cotton pajamas. He seemed as curious about her as she was about him. But if he had more questions, he didn't ask anything else.
Follow me. I'll take you home.
That was the second time they met. It was August, a couple weeks before she turned 15. The vision of his face stayed with her after that night. When she was out on the mountains, she looked for him, but he didn't always show up. Then on random nights, they would encounter each other on the mountainside under the moonlight. They didn't have long conversations, but he would walk with her for a ways. He would lead her back home. And now he was her driving instructor. She felt a little shiver of anticipation. She texted him back, "Yeah, I'll see you at 3." The day flew by. She spent her lunch in the admin office in a special room for kids serving detention. After school, Maddy stood outside on the sidewalk, her backpack slung casually over one shoulder. It was just past 3 p.m. The sky might be blue, but the wind was bitterly cold. Maddy shoved her hands into her pockets. She started down the crowded sidewalk, jostled to and fro by her peers. The basketball team ran past her on their mandatory 5-mile route. She checked her phone but didn't see a text. She assumed Gareth was going to pick her up at the same place he had dropped her off last Thursday, just outside the admin office. As she neared the usual place, she saw two things that made her heart sink. First, Gareth wasn't there, and it crossed her mind that he wasn't coming. She couldn't silence the tiny, evil voice at the back of her mind that taunted her. "He's going to ghost you." Then she saw Kaylee Makovich and the bitch crew sauntering down the sidewalk. She recognized two of the girls from Zippy's. Annoyed, Maddy pulled up her hood and tried to make herself invisible, but it was impossible. They were walking straight toward her. She braced herself for a confrontation. The varsity jackets walked past her, then they slowed down a little. One of the girls elbowed another, and they turned to stare at Maddy. They stopped. Kaylee turned with them, but she had her phone out and she was texting someone. She acted like Maddy didn't exist. The other girls noticed her, though. The one that reminded Maddy of a Barbie doll sneered. Maddy tried to remember her name. Was it Amy? She had blonde braids woven into her thick, beautiful black hair, bright blue eyeshadow, and full glossy lips. Maddy tried not to feel a little jealous of her perfect complexion.
"I heard you got detention for bringing condoms to school."
"You know those condoms weren't mine, so which one of you stuffed them in my locker?"
"I don't know what you mean."
"I can't believe you'd accuse us of that."
A short blonde girl piped up from the rear, then she stuffed a hand over her mouth and laughed. Maddy rolled her eyes. "You're a terrible liar."
"We didn't do anything."
"Not that you can prove, anyway. And you better watch your back. I still owe you a beatdown for what you did to Adam."
"You're seriously going to beat me up?" Maddy scoffed. "That's rich. I'd like to see you try." Barbie took a threatening step forward.
"You think you're tough shit just because you're trailer trash? I'll take you any day, slut."
A rumbling engine interrupted them. Both girls turned as a classic '69 Camaro pulled up across the street. It parked along the curb, across from where they were standing. The car shut off and the door opened, and Gareth stepped out. His hair was tied back. He wore his sunglasses, a faded gray t-shirt, casual athletic-style black pants, and Nike running shoes. His muscular, tatted arms were fully visible. He shoved his hands in his pockets as he started across the street. Barbie's mouth gaped.
"Kaylee, it's him. That hot guy from Zippy's."
Kaylee's head shot up and her cheeks turned instantly pink. Then girl number 3 piped up.
"His tattoos are so hot. Is that a scorpion? So he's a Scorpio, right? They're supposed to be super temperamental and, like, crazy in bed."
"Dang. What's he doing here?"
"Oh my God, Kaylee, is he coming over to talk to you?"
Kaylee was quiet, staring at Gareth with unnerving intensity. Maddy recognized that look. No, she thought. No, no, no. Maddy felt slightly sick. Kaylee must have a crush on Gareth too. Maddy stepped back from the three girls, her mind reeling. She hadn't realized her enemies would remember Gareth from Zippies. By the expression on the girls' faces, he was definitely a thing, and they had definitely talked about him. She shouldn't be surprised. Apparently Kaylee's mom had hit on him too. Gareth was probably the hottest guy in Black River. Still, it left her with a sour pit in her stomach. Gareth caught sight of them. He started toward Maddy.
He's coming over here.
Shit. Is he coming to talk to Kaylee? Maybe he remembers you. I mean, of course he remembers you. You're Kaylee Makovich. Like, the hottest girl in school.
Kaylee straightened up a little when girl number 3 said that, and she tossed her hair to one side. For a moment, she had an expectant look on her face, like she fully thought Gareth would breeze by Maddy, swoop up to her and ask for her number. Kaylee was super hot. She was probably used to guys approaching her that way. But Gareth ignored her, of course. He reached Maddy's side and stood in front of her on the street. Even a step down from the sidewalk, he was a few inches taller than her. If he saw Kaylee and the varsity jackets, he didn't acknowledge them. Maddy met Gareth's hazel eyes. She hadn't seen him in a few days, and for a moment, she had forgotten just how good-looking he was. It was strange seeing him here outside the school in broad daylight. Her secret crush, her midnight hero, now just a part of everyday life. Maddy wanted to say hi, but she was struck dumb like every other girl on the sidewalk. Gareth grinned.
Hey.
Oh, hi.
Kaylee answered before Maddy could say anything. Gareth looked surprised. His eyes darted back and forth between them. Maddy was standing with a bit of space between her and the other three girls. It was pretty obvious they weren't hanging out as a group. Then Barbie called out to him with a wide, dazzling smile.
Hey guy, what's your name?
He glanced at her, then he ignored her and turned to Maddy.
Ready to go?
Maddy tried to keep the little smirk from her face, but it was impossible. She glanced at Kaylee, then she joined Gareth in the street. She saw the look of shock on Kaylee's face. For a blissful moment, she basked in the glory of making Kaylee Makovich jealous. Gareth's hand touched her lower back as they started across the street. She thought he might put his arm around her, then he let his hand drop. Right. They were still just friends for the time being.
Slut.
She heard girl number 3 hiss at her back. Surprisingly, Gareth turned. All 3 girls jumped.
What did you say?
The varsity jackets all stared at Gareth with wide eyes. Kaylee looked especially pale. Gareth, it's fine, let's go, Maddy started. But he raised his big muscular arm and pointed at them.
Drop the bullshit. Fucking dumb kids. See this girl here next to me? She's better than all you all combined.
They stared at him. Nobody said a word. Then Gareth turned around and put his arm around Maddy's shoulders. He guided her back across the street.
You eatin'? I got you tacos in the car.
No, not yet. Thanks for standing up for me. Maddy glanced down at her shoes. She didn't really know what else to say.
They giving you a hard time?
Yeah, kinda. He opened the door for her and she got into the passenger side. She found a bag of tacos and an energy drink in the center console. He started up the engine and pulled away from the curb, then headed toward Main Street. Maddy looked out the window as they drove away from the high school. Kaylee and the bitch crew were still watching her. She took a deep breath. The confrontation unnerved her a bit. She suspected the varsity jackets weren't done with her. Now they'd seen her twice with Gareth, and Kaylee's narrow, jealous eyes meant something bad. Kaylee wouldn't be second best to crazy porno titties. Despite Gareth's protection, Maddy suspected more bullshit would be coming down the pipeline.
You got your permit with you?
Yeah, it's in my backpack.
Good.
So where are we going?
There's an old rest stop up on the mountain that's usually empty. Figure it's good for practice.
Maddy grinned. She felt a sense of relief. She wasn't ready to tackle driving down a busy street, even if Black River only had around 1,500 residents. Gareth turned the corner. Maddy ate her tacos as they passed through a few intersections in silence, the radio buzzing on Gareth's dashboard. It was tuned to a local news station. Maddy caught a crackly voice saying,
"Largest storm system in recent years predicted to hit Jefferson County as early as next week. Residents advised to stock up on fresh water and other necessities in case of mudslides or road blockages." On other news, Wildlife Services received the coroner's report for the mysterious deaths of 5 men found in the forest just outside Black River. Report confirms a wolf most likely predator. So far, the hunt for the man-killing wolf continues.
Maddy glanced at the radio, then over at Gareth. He was wearing his sunglasses and his lips were set in a firm line. He looked cool and mysterious. They headed toward Highway 20. "I saw a wolf up on the mountain."
Yeah?
"Yeah, it was near my trailer." "Do you think it's the same predator that killed those men?"
Probably. Who knows? Anyway, I've been meaning to ask, did you ever find out why those guys came by your place?
"No, it's messed up. I confronted Dean about it. I think he owes them money." "But he denied it all. I can't get him to tell me anything."
I see.
Gareth sounded very capable of making Dean talk, but Maddy didn't want a confrontation between the two men. She knew Gareth was a hair's breadth away from committing a felony where her stepfather was concerned.
No one's come around the trailer, though.
No, not when I've been home at least. Honestly, Maddy had been trying very hard not to think about it. She didn't feel very safe in the trailer, even with Joker following on her heels wherever she went. The possibility of the criminals showing up again hung over her head like a dark cloud. Main Street turned into Highway 20, and the winding road took them up into the mountains. The Camaro sped by her driveway and her mailbox, then past the gas station and Jack's Auto Repair. They were going pretty high up. "What happened to your arms?" Maddy asked, finally noticing the long cuts that covered Gareth's forearms.
Banged them up on a truck. No big deal.
"They look like nails or something."
Don't worry about it. They'll heal up just fine.
Maddy stared at the cuts again. Then she glanced up at his face. She sensed there was more to the story, but she couldn't imagine why he'd lie to her about that. She sat back in her seat, chewing on her lip, wondering about the cuts on his arms and the general mystery that was Gareth Delarosa. Hey, thanks for listening! I'm so excited Gareth is finally taking me on my first driving lesson. But wait, who's that creeper in the woods? Is somebody watching us? Stay tuned for the next chapter of Heart of the Wolf, publishing every Wednesday and Friday at 3 p.m.